What are the current trends in the energy sector in India? How are they likely to impact? What are the main challenges, areas of investment in the energy sector? We are happy that a lot of you have reached out with very interesting questions, which I'm happy to answer. Our team has put up this small case which focuses on themes which are very important, just not financially, but also for the global economy, which is the energy transition, also the EV vehicles and the recycling theme. These are the three components which our theme has, and we believe that they are serving a big purpose in terms of what the future needs of our planet and also the financial world would be. So, with that, I'll just take one by one the questions that you have and try to answer them. First question that we've received is, what are the current trends in the energy sector in India and how are they likely to impact investing opportunities? So if you look at the energy mix that our country or most of the countries in the world still have, is that the thermal portion of the part of the energy is pretty high. But over the years, it has been either growing negatively or stagnating. And there's a very high growth element which is of the renewable energy, which is growing at a rate of 25, 30, 40, 50% in various economies. In our own economy, if you look at, our prime minister had a goal of 100 gigawatts by 2022, and we are very close. In fact, almost achieved that, and now we are aiming at a hefty 500 gigawatt by 2030. So if you look at the kind of growth that our own country installations were had as a CAGR of 50-60% was decade, and in generally high growth sector, you find companies which grow very fast, right? So if you look at our country is fourth in the world in terms of renewable energy capacity, and the solar power capacity we are lying fifth in the world. And by 2023, and we'd be at a capacity of roughly 120 gigawatts, wherein renewable space in thermal around 230 to 40 gigawatts, hydro around 50, and nuclear around 7. But the non-fossil fuel is where the growth will be pretty high, close to 20-25% even going forward, which we believe. And the renewable energy, in a way, would take a lion's share by the end of maybe this decade or beginning next decade, which we believe is something which our country is poised to. And the manufacturing of solar equipment, just not for India, but our country has an aspiration to also make for the world, is what the current, you can say, scenario is. So if you look at the opportunities that are there, is just not the current generation in our country, but also making equipment for the whole world is where the focus of our manufacturing setup or the government is. And also a lot of entrepreneurs in our country have announced plans where they want to go global and maybe give the mighty China a run for its money in terms of the dominance that it has in these equipments. The second question is, what are the main challenges that are facing investors in the Indian energy sector? Now, that's an important question because, the challenges that have emerged are more to do with, regulatory changes which keep on hampering the growth of the sector rather than anything else. So if you look at the policy front, where the government in a way introduced that there is an ALM in approval that the module manufacturers require, and most of the domestic manufacturers in India got a big advantage in terms of participating in all the tenders because ALM practically didn't have any Chinese supplier. So it in a way halted most of the imports, and that was something which used to boost a lot of domestic manufacturing of solar panels. And now the government has completely made a U-turn by deferring the ALM requirement by 2 years. So now what will happen is that all these investments that are happening in terms of the solar power panel capacity in a tailspin, because you don't know when the government is going to be serious or where they are making a trade-off between the short term and the long term, right? So the government is always in a confusion, right? In taking long-term decisions, you are in a way compromising a lot of short-term finances, and that is what the government currently in India is not wanting to, and that's where the short-term pay of maybe higher cost of modules which our country would make because our base is small, which they're not wanting to take, and hence the ALM requirement has been in a way. So these are certain things which I believe, or regulatory clarity which the government brings, a path which people are shown that this is the path that you should walk. That is where I guess most of the challenges would be addressed. The other problem which the energy sector faces is also the rising interest costs, right? So if you look at what has happened with the interest costs around the world, they've gone up, and also in India, they've gone up pretty dramatically over the past 1 year. And any typical energy project has 70% funding from external sources and 30% equity funding, and that 70% funding cost has gone up dramatically. So generally, in this kind of scenario, the profitability of these projects either goes down, or maybe investors want to rethink their plan in terms of deploying these capacities, because the interest burden would be significantly higher than it was there in the past 3-4 years. So that's another challenge that we believe this sector is facing. The third very interesting challenge, which in a way now is easing, is the raw material prices. Again, the raw material prices had gone up dramatically post the Russia war, and that created a lot of projects. Maybe prices go up because of the raw material prices in terms of solar or wind, whichever equipment you take, or steel, which is the basic structure cost, which goes up dramatically. And that in a way has reduced to a very large extent this year. For example, the module prices in India have gone down by 20-25% over the past 2 months, and they're expected to be in this range in the coming year. And maybe the steel prices also have come down from the elevated levels, and that is helping in terms of reducing the overall project cost, which in a way can now be much more sanguine. And this stability in prices helps the sector a lot. So third question is, what are the promising areas of investment in the energy sector and why? Now, if you look at the Indian energy space, the demand is very robust. If you look at the manufacturing need of our country for power is going up dramatically because of the China plus one strategy. A lot of sectors, just in case in point, take the steel sector, which requires such huge amounts of power, is shifting its base to India. If you look at China, is losing its dominance, and just yesterday, China announced that is for the third year consecutively they'll be reducing their output in steel, and the slack of China is being completely taken up by India, and it is taken up so well that the cost of steel in India is now 15% lesser when we compare it to the rest parts of the world. So when you have such sectors which are growing so fast, which need energy, the requirement for Indian power would be around 9 to 10% growth year on year. And this growth cannot come from thermal, right? Because thermal power capacities are growing at just 1 or 2%, right? So the balance 8% needs to be taken up by renewables, which in a way trickles down on the base of renewables around 30-35%, right? It's not just 8% on their base, because that base is very small right now. So if you look at going forward, there are two large trends that are happening. There is A, large scale manufacturing that is going to come to India. B, lot of the modern technologies. We are talking about electrification of our cars, electrification of our manufacturing, because the transition towards the clean fuel that we are talking about will mean lesser fossil fuels, and that will mean higher energy being produced. And hence, that base is slated to grow very fast. Second very important trend is that the power costs are going up around the world and in India also now, because there was a supply shortage of a lot of these raw materials, be it natural gas, be it coal, be it even solar power components or wind power components. And these shortages have created high project costs or high operating costs, and hence the power costs are going up around the world, because the demand is also higher than the supply, because the capacities have not kept pace with the demand that has gone up. So if you look at, if the energy cost was hovering at around 5-6 rupees per unit, has gone up to 7-8%, and a lot of states are announcing hikes in terms of the power cost that these industries will have. So it makes the whole business of putting up a solar power plant or a renewable energy power plant very attractive, because I told you that the raw material prices have gone down, right? So the solar module prices have gone down. The power that you're going to manufacture, you're getting to get maybe a 20-30% higher, you can say, revenue out of selling that power. Or if you're using it in house, you'd be saving almost 20-30% more, because the power costs are moving up in a lot of states, and the announcements are, in Maharashtra, for example, this year, the power costs are moving up by 20%. So this is a very important, you can say, trend, which is promising, where we believe that the project offtake slated to grow at a lesser percentage points would grow at a very fast pace now because of this large overarching theme where corporates would want to reduce their power costs. And there's also pressure because if you want to compete in the global economy, the raw material prices, if you want to bring them down, or your product prices, if you want to bring down, power is a very important element if you can bring that down. Because human capital already India has a low cost. If you have power cost which is low and capital cost which is low, then it makes a very good trinity of bringing the product prices in India to a level where we can compare with a lot of these Asian economies. If you want to move towards renewables, it will also require a lot of investment in terms of storage, right? Because if you want the grid to be stable, you want continuous supply of power, right? And solar or wind, they cannot have continuous, you can say, power supply. So you need storage whenever sun and wind is available. You generate excess power so that you storage in batteries, and when it is not available, that storage gives the grid when there is no sun or when the wind has gone away, right? So that is a combination of a hybrid park where there is solar during the day, which is generating very fast paced energy. Wind maybe during the day also, and more in the night is generating that energy, and the storage of 5-6 hours, which will again supply to the grid when both are not in a way functioning that well. So this large trend, we believe, which has caught pace in Western economies, would also take up in our economy, and in fact at a very fast pace, I believe, and that is what I believe is the most promising part.